Hello, and welcome to a little video where we're going to discuss zero and negative exponent properties. Let's begin with zero. Zero property of exponent states that any number or variable raised to the zero power is 1. That means anything, any number, any letter, and the smallest thing you could think of and the largest thing, anything from A to Z, raise it to the power of 0, it's going to give us 1. So, uh, 4 to the 0 is 1. 2.5 to the 0 is 1. X to the 0 is 1. 181 to the 0 is 1. Alright, so that's probably my favorite of the rules. It's the easiest. 1 is great because we're going to be multiplying and dividing with it, and multiplying and dividing by 1 is fantastic, right? It gives us the same number back. Let's talk about the negative exponent rule. Negative exponent rule states a non-zero number or variable raised to a negative exponent is the reciprocal of that number or variable to the positive exponent. Now, you've heard reciprocal before, specifically when it comes to fractions, right? We've talked about reciprocals when we were solving equations that involved fractions at the very end. The reciprocal is our fraction flipped upside down, which means a negative exponent is on the wrong side of our fraction line. So I like to think of this rule as the flip it rule. Again, that's not the official name, right? It's the negative exponent rule, but this is how I think of it in my head. If it's negative, it's on the wrong side of the fraction line. I have to flip it. So here's a little example. 3 to the power of negative 2 is a whole number to the power of negative 2. Any whole number can be written over 1. So 3 has a negative exponent, which tells me it's on the wrong side of the fraction line. Let's flip it. That's why it ends up on the bottom there. Perfect. When there's nothing remaining on the top or bottom of a fraction, we give it a 1 there. It has to do with the identity of multiplication and division, but that's something we can talk about later if you'd like. Here I'd just like to focus on the exponents. Here's another example where we have a negative exponent on the bottom of a fraction, which tells me it's on the wrong side. Let's put it on top. So here I just wrote a to the third because it's a whole number. I could rewrite it as a fraction, a to the third over 1, but it is the same thing as a to the third, and it's on top of the fraction line. Let's do a couple examples. All right, letter E. Negative 2 to the power of negative 2. So I'm going to rewrite this as a fraction, and it's going to equal a fraction. I notice that there's a negative exponent on top of the fraction, which means it's got to go to the bottom. And the base remains the same, it's still negative 2, but the exponent becomes positive. That's where it belongs. That's where the positive exponent belongs. There's nothing left on top, and based on that identity that I mentioned earlier, we're going to put a 1 there. Letter F. That's already a fraction, so I'm just going to set it equal to fraction line. This fraction has a negative exponent on the bottom, which means I need to flip it and put it up top. This becomes y to the power of positive 17. There's nothing left on the bottom, so I'm going to write a 1. Letter G, 3 to the negative third. I'm going to rewrite it as a fraction equal to a fraction. There's a negative exponent on top, which means I'm going to take it and put, well, that's ugly. Which means I'm going to take it and put it on the bottom. The base remains the same, but the exponent becomes positive 3. There's nothing left on top, so I'm going to put a 1. Now, I had students ask me, hey, what about that 1 from before on the bottom? Well, think about it. 1 times anything is itself. So sure, I could write 1 times 3 to the third on the bottom, but 1 times 3 to the third is 3 to the third. So I don't need to do that. Letter H. I have x to the negative 7th. Now, although x is a variable, I can still write it as a fraction like that. X to the negative 7th over 1, and it's going to be equal to another fraction line. We have a negative exponent on top, which means we're going to take this and put it on the bottom. The base is still x, but I'm going to give it a power of 7, a positive 7, and I'm going to put a 1 on top. That's it. Letter I, we already have a fraction, so I'm going to set it equal to another fraction. I have a negative exponent on the bottom, so I'm going to put it up top. The base remains 4, but the exponent becomes positive 2. There's nothing left on the bottom, so I'm just going to leave it as 1. Ooh, letter J. Letter J is special. So, yeah, it is 2x to the third, x to the negative third over 1, but there is something here that we don't see. We don't see the invisible little multiplication happening between 2 and x to the negative third. So in this problem, when I set it equal to a fraction, the only thing that the negative 3 affects is x. So I'm only going to take x and change it to a positive 3 on the bottom of my fraction. The 2 stays on top. So be mindful. Numbers and variables are separate. They are separate entities. Okay, let's continue. Oh, there we go. Letter K. We already have a fraction line. Let's set it equal to a fraction line. Oops. Okay. Now I spot a negative exponent here on the bottom, which means I'm going to take x to the fourth and I'm going to bring it up top. Now the 4 from the top from before, does that have a negative exponent? No, it stays right there. But I am going to place x to the positive fourth up top next to it and leave it over 1. Letter L. Letter L is not a fraction. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it. And I'm going to include that little times that's happening between 7 and y to the negative 5th. Y is to the negative 5th. It means we're going to take y and we're going to place it on the bottom of our fraction line and give it a positive 5 power. The 7 remains on top. All right, letter M. Ooh, letter M is fun because, well, I think it's fun because it has a negative exponent on top and it has a negative exponent on the bottom. Well, that means I'm going to take the top and rewrite it on the bottom with a positive exponent. And then I'm going to take the bottom and write it on top with a positive exponent. Fantastic. Let's try letter N. Ooh, now I'm starting to combine both negatives and 0 powers. Now, just as a reminder from before, anything to the power of 0 is 1. So really, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cross this off and write times 1. Because that's what it is. It's just a 1. I'm just preparing it for myself. Y to the negative third. Ooh, that's a negative exponent. I know I'm going to have to put it up top. Now, on top, 4 times 1 is 4. I'm just combining my numbers. And then I have y to the power of positive 3. There's nothing left on the bottom, so we're going to write a 1. Ooh, we got another power of 0. So first I'm going to rewrite this as a fraction. Okay. Now y to the 0 is 1. Just cross it off and add a little times 1 here instead. Do I have any negative exponents? Yes, I got a negative 7 up here next to the x. Okay. The 8. The 8 does not have a negative exponent. It stays up top. If I write that 8 down, 8 times 1 is 8. X to the negative 7 gets moved down and becomes x to the positive 7 on the bottom. Z to the power 4 stays